and welcome. It is the most closely watched trial in America, with live television coverage and daily updates in the press. Now, closing arguments are underway in the George Zimmerman trial, but not before some last-minute fireworks in the courtroom. You're looking, in fact, in live pictures as the prosecution wraps up its case. Zimmerman's own attorneys blasted the prosecution for asking the jury to consider new, lesser charges. Zimmerman has been charged with killing unarmed teenager Trayvon Martin in a case that's brought renewed attention to racial profiling in the U.S. The trial has captivated much of the country with its twists and turns and courtroom theatrics by the attorneys, like using a mannequin to give what turned out to be conflicting accounts of the encounter that led to the fatal gunshot.
Trayvon Martin. Were the injuries on Mr. Zimmerman's back of his head consistent with someone doing this on cement?
And he said he was in the waist area, and then the defendant may have, or Trayvon Martin may have slid down. And my question to you is, would it be consistent, the 90 degrees, if Trayvon Martin had been backing up and the defendant raised his gun and shot at 90 degrees?
We're joined now by Pate, a trial attorney here in Atlanta with a focus on criminal defense. Thanks so much for being with us. You've been watching this trial from the start, and at the start, it looked like a pretty simple case. An armed adult confronts an unarmed teenager. The armed adult shoots the unarmed teenager, kills him. It would seem like an open and shut case. Has it turned out that way?
Not at all. You know, the thing that is a problem here for the prosecution is the stand your ground law, which basically allows someone like Mr. Zimmerman to use deadly force when he believes he's in reasonable fear of being harmed by another individual. And that's what happened in this case.
It has been a case not only on the points of law, but also just points of fact. What actually happened? The defense is arguing one way, obviously the prosecution another. Who's doing a better job?
I think the defense is doing an outstanding job, really from start to finish. I think the prosecution started this case and they were a little too overzealous. They overpromised. They told the jury they would have all this evidence of George Zimmerman being actively out to find Trayvon Martin, pursuing him, initiating a fight, and then ultimately shooting him. I don't think the evidence has supported their version of the facts.
The case collapsed on them, you think?
Not so much collapsed, but it's certainly been weakened. I'd say the defense poked a lot of holes in the case, even during the prosecution's case in chief, and that's not common. Usually you have to wait till it's your turn as a defense team to call your own witnesses. But in this case, they turned a lot of the prosecution's witnesses into defense witnesses, and that is unusual.
Now, what we've been seeing as the trial nears its end is that in addition to being charged with murder, there are new charges being brought, or the prosecution is trying to bring new charges against Zimmerman. You think that if you're in trouble and the government wants to charge you with more crimes, you'd be in bigger trouble. Is that the way it plays out in a U.S. court of law?
You know, I'm certain a lot of people are wondering why we're just now trying to figure out what we're charging George Zimmerman with. But the law does allow the judge to tell the jury that there are other options. If you do not believe the state has proven him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of murder, you can consider manslaughter.
Well, let me jump in on that thought. So is the state itself conceding publicly that it hasn't managed to do what it tried to do at the outset?
They're not conceding that, but they certainly want the option of arguing to the jury for some sort of compromise verdict. You know, we may not have gotten as far as we had hoped to. The evidence may not support murder, but Zimmerman did something wrong, and we're going to give you the option to convict him of something.
Pate, the trial continues. It's going to be something to see if George Zimmerman walks after this. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in the days to come. Thanks very much. The ouster of Mohammed